Listen closely. What I am about to tell you will shake everything you thought you knew about love. This is not feel-good advice. This is not what your therapist will say. This is raw truth, pulled from the darkest corners of human psychology. Why do women chase men who hurt them? Why do they ignore the good man and run after the one who treats them like they are nothing? This pattern destroys lives, it breaks hearts, and yet it repeats itself over and over like a curse no one can break. Sigmund Freud saw this. He studied it. He pulled back the curtain on the human mind and revealed something most people cannot accept. He called it the repetition compulsion, and it explains everything. Here is what Freud discovered. Deep inside the unconscious mind, there lives a force that pulls us toward pain, not because we are stupid, not because we are broken, but because pain feels familiar, and the human mind craves what it knows, even when what it knows is suffering. Think about this. A woman grows up watching her father ignore her mother. She sees coldness. She sees distance. She sees a man who gives nothing and takes everything. That becomes her blueprint. That becomes the template burned into her unconscious mind. Years later, she meets a man who is kind. He listens. He cares. He shows up. And something inside her rejects him, not consciously. She does not wake up and say, "I will choose pain today." No. Her unconscious does the choosing for her. It whispers, "This kindness feels wrong. This safety feels dangerous. This love feels fake." Freud would say she is trying to master the original wound. She goes back to the same type of man, hoping this time will be different. This time she will win the love she never got as a child. This time she will fix what was broken. But she never does, because the game is rigged from the start. Now, let me take you deeper. Carl Jung saw the same pattern but explained it differently. He spoke about the shadow. The shadow is the part of yourself you refuse to see. It holds everything you deny, everything you reject, everything you push down into darkness. And here is the twisted truth. Whatever you deny in yourself, you will find in others. If a woman denies her own darkness, if she pretends she is only light and goodness and purity, then her shadow grows hungry. It demands to be fed. So she finds a man who embodies everything she refuses to accept in herself. The anger, the chaos, the wildness, the cruelty. She does not love him. She loves the parts of herself she sees reflected in him. Jung would say she is not chasing the man. She is chasing her own rejected self. This is why the nice guy fails. He offers no mirror for her shadow. He reflects only what she already accepts about herself. So there is no tension, no pull, no electricity. The shadow needs friction. It needs conflict. It needs someone who stirs the darkness she pretends does not exist. Now let us go even darker. Friedrich Nietzsche understood power better than almost anyone. He said that human beings do not want happiness. They want power. They want to overcome. They want resistance. Without resistance, life becomes meaningless. Without struggle, there is no growth. Without pain, there is no story worth living. Apply this to women who chase toxic men and the picture becomes clear. A good man offers no resistance. He is easy. He is predictable. He gives everything without a fight. And somewhere deep inside, that feels empty. It feels weak. Not because the man is actually weak, but because conquest without challenge holds no value. Nietzsche would say, the woman is not broken. She is simply following the will to power. She wants a man she must earn. She wants a love she must fight for. She wants a connection that costs her something. Because only then does it feel real. Only then does it feel like it matters. Arthur Schopenhauer took this even further. He believed that all human desire is suffering. We want what we do not have. And the moment we get it, we stop wanting it. This is the cycle of desire. It never ends. It only shifts targets. So when a woman gets the good man, the safe man, the man who actually loves her, something inside her stops wanting him. Not because he changed, but because the chase is over. Schopenhauer would say she does not want the man. She wants the wanting itself. She wants the hunger. She wants the ache. And the moment she has him, the hunger dies. This is the curse Schopenhauer saw in all of life. We are driven by desires we can never satisfy. And love is the cruelest desire of all. Now you understand the foundation. Freud showed us the repetition of pain. Jung showed us the chase for shadow. Nietzsche showed us the need for resistance. And Schopenhauer showed us the trap of desire itself. But this is only the beginning. The psychology goes much deeper. And in the next segment, I will reveal exactly how these forces combine to create the patterns that trap women in cycles of toxic love again and again. Now we go deeper into the machinery of the mind. What you are about to hear will explain why logic fails when it comes to love, why a woman can know a man is bad for her and still run toward him like a moth to a flame. Freud discovered something he called the death drive. He named it Thanatos, and it changed everything we thought we knew about human motivation. Most people believe humans seek pleasure and avoid pain. Freud said that is only half the story. Deep in the unconscious, there exists a drive toward destruction, toward chaos, toward the end of all tension. The death drive pulls us toward what hurts us, not to destroy ourselves completely, but to return to a state before consciousness, before struggle, before the pain of being alive. When a woman chases a man who hurts her, Thanatos whispers in her ear. It tells her that the chaos feels right, the pain feels like home, the suffering feels like truth, because deep down, part of her wants to stop fighting. Part of her wants to surrender to the destruction, not because she is weak, but because the death drive lives in all of us. It seduces us with the promise of ending the endless struggle of existence. The good man cannot compete with this. He offers life, he offers growth, he offers the hard work of building something real. But the death drive does not want growth. It wants collapse. It wants the sweet relief of falling. And toxic men offer exactly that. They offer the permission to stop trying, to stop being good, to stop holding everything together. They offer destruction dressed up as passion. Carl Jung understood this from another angle. He spoke of anima and animus. Every person carries both masculine and feminine energy inside them. A woman carries an inner masculine figure Jung called the animus. This animus shapes what she finds attractive. It is built from every man who mattered in her early life. Her father, her brothers, the first men who showed her what masculine energy looks like. If those early men were distant, cold, or cruel, her animus becomes damaged. It becomes twisted. And here is the trap. She will spend her whole life attracted to men who match that damaged inner image, not because she wants to suffer, but because her psyche is trying to heal the animus. She unconsciously believes that if she can make this type of man love her, she will finally fix the broken masculine energy inside herself. But it never works, because the animus cannot be healed through external men. It can only be healed by facing the inner wound directly, by recognizing that the cruel man she chases is just a projection of her own damaged masculine energy. Jung would tell her to stop looking outside and start looking within. But most women never hear this message. They keep chasing the same type of man, hoping for a different result. Now let me show you something even darker. Friedrich Nietzsche said that what does not kill us makes us stronger, but he also said something people ignore. He said that suffering is the path to meaning, that humans need suffering to feel alive, that comfort and safety create weak, empty people who have nothing to live for. This explains why toxic relationships feel so intense, so real, so meaningful, because they hurt, and pain creates the illusion of depth. A woman in a toxic relationship wakes up every day fighting for his attention, fighting for his love, fighting to prove she is enough, and that fight gives her life purpose. It gives her drama, it gives her a story. The good man offers peace, but peace feels like emptiness to a mind addicted to chaos. Nietzsche would say she has become dependent on suffering as her source of meaning. Without the pain, she does not know who she is. Without the struggle, her life feels hollow. So she returns to the toxic man again and again, not because he is good for her, but because he gives her the suffering she has learned to need. Arthur Schopenhauer would add something crucial here. He said that humans are driven by blind will, a force inside us that wants to survive and reproduce at any cost. This will does not care about happiness. It does not care about safety. It only cares about continuing itself. And here is the twisted part. Toxic men often appear stronger, more dominant, more powerful, not because they actually are, but because they perform dominance through cruelty. Schopenhauer would say the woman's unconscious will seize these signals of strength and interprets them as good genetics, as power worth passing on. Her rational mind knows he is bad, but her will does not listen to her rational mind. It only listens to ancient instincts that confuse cruelty with strength. That mistake, emotional unavailability for high value, that see a man who causes pain as a man worth chasing. This is the deep programming that makes women choose wrong. It is not stupidity, it is not weakness. It is the blind will inside her, following ancient rules that no longer serve her. Rules written millions of years ago when survival meant choosing the most aggressive male. But we do not live in that world anymore. The rules are outdated, and yet they still control behavior from the shadows. Now you see how these forces combine. The death drive pulls toward destruction. The damaged animus seeks impossible healing through external men. The need for suffering creates false meaning, and the blind will mistakes cruelty for strength. These are the invisible chains that trap women in cycles of toxic love. But there is more. In the next segment, I will show you the role trauma plays, how childhood wounds become adult patterns, and why breaking free requires facing truths most people refuse to see. Now we enter the darkest chamber of the mind, the place where childhood wounds become adult prisons, where trauma does not just hurt you once, it programs you to seek that same hurt over and over until you break the code. Sigmund Freud spent years studying trauma, and he discovered something that destroys the comfortable lies we tell ourselves about healing. He found that traumatized people do not avoid their trauma, they recreate it. They build their entire lives around repeating the original wound in different forms. He called this the repetition compulsion, and it is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. Here is how it works. A girl grows up with a father who abandons her, or a father who rages, or a father who loves her one day and ignores her the next. That inconsistency carves a wound into her psyche, a wound that never heals because she never understood why it happened. Why was she not enough? Why did he leave? Why did his love feel conditional? Those questions haunt her unconscious mind, and the unconscious cannot rest with unanswered questions. So it creates a mission. It says, I will find a man like father, and this time I will make him stay. This time I will earn the love that was denied. This time I will prove I am worthy. But Freud knew this mission always fails, because she is not actually dealing with the real father. She is dealing with a ghost, a projection, a man who reminds her unconscious of the original wound. And no matter how hard she tries, she cannot change the past by fixing the present. The wound stays open, the pattern repeats, and she stays trapped in the cycle. Carl Jung saw trauma through a different lens. He said trauma creates what he called complexes. A complex is like a splinter in the mind, a piece of psychic material that splits off from consciousness and develops its own life, its own energy, its own agenda. When a woman has a father complex, that complex controls her choices without her knowing. It chooses her partners, it interprets situations, it runs programs in the background of her mind. The father complex searches for men who trigger it, men who feel familiar, men who recreate the original dynamic. And when she finds such a man, the complex activates. It floods her system with a feeling she mistakes for love. But it is not love, it is recognition. The complex recognizes its own pattern and says, yes, this is home, this is what I know. Jung would tell her that healing requires making the complex conscious, bringing it into the light, seeing it for what it is, a wounded piece of her past trying to control her present. But most women never do this work. They stay unconscious. And the complex keeps choosing toxic men because that is all it knows how to do. Now let me show you something Ernest Becker understood about trauma and death. Becker said that humans spend their entire lives running from the terror of death. We build what he called immortality projects, ways to feel significant, ways to feel like we matter, ways to deny that we are just temporary flesh heading toward decay. For many women, love becomes the immortality project. If she can win the love of a difficult man, she proves her worth, she proves she matters, she proves she has value that transcends her mortality. The harder the man is to win, the more her victory would mean. Because deep down, Becker would say, she is not trying to win a man, she is trying to win against death itself, to prove that her existence has meaning, that she is special, that she will not simply vanish into nothing. This is why toxic men become addictive, because the chase never ends, the validation never comes. So the project never completes, and as long as the project continues, she has a reason to exist, she has a purpose, she has something to fight for. Becker would say she is terrified of winning, because winning means the project ends. And then what? Then she must face the void again, the meaninglessness, the terror of existing without purpose. Peter Wessel Zapp took this even darker. Zapp said that human consciousness is a tragic mistake, that we are animals cursed with the ability to see our own meaninglessness, and we cope with this curse through 4 mechanisms. Isolation, we push painful truths out of awareness. Anchoring, we attach ourselves to limited values and ideas. distraction. We fill our lives with noise to avoid thinking, and sublimation. We transform our pain into something we call meaningful. A woman chasing a toxic man is using all four mechanisms. She isolates the truth that she deserves better. She anchors her worth to winning his love. She distracts herself with the constant drama of the relationship. And she sublimates her pain into a story about passionate love, about destiny, about soul connections. Zapf would say she is not really in love. She is in survival mode, using the relationship as a defense against the unbearable weight of conscious existence. The toxic man becomes her anchor in a meaningless universe, and letting go of him means letting go of the illusion that saves her from despair. Thomas Ligotti went even further. Ligotti said consciousness itself is a horror, that being aware of our own existence is a curse we cannot escape, and we spend our lives creating puppets, identities, stories, anything to avoid facing the nightmare of being. The woman trapped in toxic love has created a puppet show. She is the suffering heroine, he is the cruel lover, and the drama between them distracts her from the deeper horror underneath, the horror that none of it matters, that she is just consciousness trapped in flesh, moving toward death, trying desperately to feel something real. Ligotti would say, the toxic relationship is her chosen nightmare, because it is better than the formless horror of facing existence without narrative, without purpose, without the comforting lie that love gives meaning to the meaningless. Now you see the full picture. Trauma creates repetition, complexes control choice, immortality projects drive behavior, and consciousness itself becomes the enemy we flee from through the distraction of toxic love. But there is still one more layer. In the next segment, I will reveal how society programs these patterns, how culture teaches women to romanticize their own suffering, and why breaking free requires rejecting almost everything you have been taught about love. Now we must face an uncomfortable truth. This is not just about individual psychology. This is about how society itself programs women to chase their own destruction, how culture turns suffering into romance, how every story, every song, every movie teaches the same poisonous lesson. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this better than anyone. He spoke of slave morality versus master morality. Slave morality glorifies suffering. It says that pain makes you noble, that enduring abuse makes you virtuous, that sacrificing yourself proves your love. This is the morality fed to women from birth. You are taught that your value comes from how much you can endure, how much you can give, how much you can suffer for love. Nietzsche would say, this is a trap. That slave morality keeps people weak by convincing them their weakness is actually strength. A woman stays with a man who hurts her and calls it loyalty. She endures his cruelty and calls it patience. She sacrifices her own needs and calls it love. But Nietzsche would call it what it really is: self-destruction dressed up as virtue. The culture sells this poison through every channel. Listen to the songs on the radio. They celebrate toxic love. They make pain sound romantic. They turn obsession into poetry. The message is always the same. Real love hurts. Real passion destroys. If it does not break you, it is not real. This is programming, and it runs deep. Deeper than most people can see, because it starts early. The fairy tales you heard as a child. The princess who endures abuse from stepsisters and gets her prince. The girl who loves the beast until he transforms. The mermaid who gives up her voice for a man who does not even know her name. Every story teaches the same lesson. Suffer enough, and you will be rewarded. Sacrifice yourself and love will save you. But Nietzsche knew the truth. Those who preach sacrifice are usually the ones who benefit from your suffering. The toxic man does not tell you to suffer for him because it makes you noble. He tells you that because it serves him. And the culture does not romanticize your pain because it cares about you. It romanticizes your pain because it keeps you compliant. It keeps you small. It keeps you trapped. Carl Jung would add another layer to this. He spoke of the collective unconscious, the shared pool of symbols and archetypes that every human inherits. And one of the most powerful archetypes is the wounded healer, the woman who transforms pain into purpose, who saves the broken man with her love, who redeems the villain through her sacrifice. This archetype lives in the collective unconscious, and it activates when a woman meets a toxic man. Something ancient wakes up inside her, a voice that says, you can save him, you can heal him, your love is powerful enough to change him. Jung would say she is not responding to the actual man, she is responding to the archetype, to an image thousands of years old that promises redemption through suffering. But here is what Jung also knew. Archetypes are not instructions, they are patterns, and patterns can trap you if you do not understand them. The wounded healer archetype is not telling you to stay with toxic men. It is showing you a pattern that exists in human psychology, but you must choose whether to follow it or break it. Most women never make that choice consciously. They simply act out the archetype like puppets dancing on invisible strings. They believe their own story. They believe they are the heroine who will succeed where others failed. They believe their love is special, powerful, different, but the pattern always ends the same way. The toxic man does not change. The sacrifice leads nowhere, and the woman loses years of her life chasing an archetype that was never meant to be lived literally. Arthur Schopenhauer saw how culture manipulates desire. He said that what we call free will is mostly illusion, that we are driven by forces we do not control, and then we create stories to explain why we did what we were always going to do. Culture plants desires in your mind and then convinces you those desires came from you. You think you want the bad boy because he excites you, but Schopenhauer would ask, where did that association come from? Who taught you that danger equals excitement? Who told you that unavailability equals value? Who convinced you that a man who makes you cry is more real than a man who makes you laugh? The culture did, through a million small messages, through images and stories and songs that rewired your brain before you were old enough to question them. Schopenhauer would say you are not choosing toxic men. You are executing a program installed by forces that do not care about your happiness, forces that benefit from your confusion, your pain, your endless search for love in all the wrong places. Now let me show you how Albert Camus understood the absurdity of this trap. Camus said that life is absurd, that we search for meaning in a universe that offers none, and we must choose how to respond to that absurdity. We can deny it, escape it through distraction, or we can face it and create our own meaning despite the meaninglessness. A woman chasing toxic love is running from the absurd. She cannot face the possibility that love might not save her, that there is no perfect relationship waiting to give her life meaning, that she is alone in a random universe and no man can change that. So she creates a drama, a story where suffering leads to redemption, where pain has purpose, where her struggles mean something. But Camus would say this is a lie she tells herself to avoid the truth that she must create her own meaning, that she must save herself, that no toxic man will ever transform into her savior, no matter how long she waits or how much she endures. The culture does not want her to know this, because a woman who creates her own meaning does not need the products being sold to her, the self-help books, the relationship coaches, the idea that she is incomplete without a man. The entire industry built on female insecurity collapses when women stop believing the lie. Thomas Ligotti would say the culture itself is a puppet master, that we are all characters in a horror story written by forces we cannot see or control. That consciousness is manipulated from birth to serve agendas we do not understand. And romantic love is one of the most effective control mechanisms ever invented. It keeps women focused on men instead of power, on relationships instead of freedom, on fixing broken people instead of building their own lives. Ligotti would say, toxic love is not a bug in the system. It is a feature. It is working exactly as designed, to keep you distracted, to keep you drained, to keep you from ever asking the deeper questions about why the system exists at all. Now you understand the architecture of the trap. Individual trauma creates the wound. Psychology creates the repetition. Archetypes provide the script, and culture sells you the poison while calling it romance. These forces work together to keep women chasing men who hurt them generation after generation. But there is one final piece. In the last segment, I will reveal how to break free, what it actually takes to escape these patterns, and why most people never do it. Not because they cannot, but because freedom requires facing truths darker than the chains themselves. Now we arrive at the final truth, the one most people refuse to hear. Breaking free from these patterns is possible, but it requires something most people will not give. It requires you to die, not physical death, but the death of who you thought you were, the death of the stories you told yourself, the death of the identity you built around your suffering. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the painful journey of becoming who you actually are, instead of who trauma made you. Jung said that most people avoid individuation at all costs, because it means facing your shadow, looking directly at the parts of yourself you have spent your whole life running from, the rage you pretended was not there, the selfishness you called sacrifice, the fear you dressed up as love. Individuation requires you to stop lying, and most people would rather stay in prison than face the truth. For a woman trapped in toxic love, individuation means admitting hard things, that she chose this, that some part of her wanted the pain, that she used the relationship to avoid growing, that she stayed, not because she had no choice, but because leaving meant facing herself. And facing herself meant seeing how much time she wasted, how many red flags she ignored, how many times she betrayed herself to keep a man who never deserved her. Jung would say this realization is unbearable for most people, so they avoid it. They blame him, they blame society, they blame their trauma, they blame everything except the part of themselves that made the choice to stay. Not because blame makes them feel better, but because blame allows them to avoid the deepest wound, the wound of recognizing their own agency, their own participation in their own suffering. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this death and rebirth. He spoke of the person who creates their own values instead of accepting the values given to them. But to become the Bermensch, you must first experience what Nietzsche called the death of God, the moment when all external authority collapses, when you realize no one is coming to save you, no father, no lover, no divine force watching over you. You are alone, and you must create meaning from nothing. For a woman leaving toxic love, this is the hardest moment, because toxic love gave her something. It gave her an enemy to fight, a project to complete, a reason to wake up every day. And when she lets go of the toxic man, she loses all of that. She enters what Nietzsche called the desert, a place of emptiness where old values have died and new ones have not yet been born. Most women turn back at this point. They run back to toxic love because the desert is too frightening, because emptiness feels worse than pain, because at least pain is something, at least suffering gives you a story. But Nietzsche would say only those who cross the desert reach the other side. Only those who endure the death of all comfort discover what they are actually capable of becoming. Sigmund Freud had his own version of this truth. He said that analysis is complete not when the patient feels better, but when they can face reality without illusion, when they can see themselves and their past clearly without the comforting lies they used to survive. Freud called this working through, and he knew it was the hardest work a human being could do. Working through means revisiting the wound again and again. Not to stay stuck in it, but to drain it of power, to see it from every angle until it no longer controls you, to understand why you chose what you chose, without judgment or shame, just clarity, just truth. And truth, Freud said, is the only thing that actually sets you free. But freedom comes with a price. Ernest Becker understood this price better than most. He said that facing reality means facing death, not metaphorical death, actual death. The fact that you are a temporary biological organism moving toward decay, and all your immortality projects, including romantic love, are just distractions from that unbearable truth. Becker would say that breaking free from toxic love means giving up your immortality project, admitting that no man will save you from death, no relationship will make you matter in the grand scheme of the universe. You are finite, small, temporary, and love cannot change that. This realization crushes most people, but Becker believed it could also liberate, because once you stop trying to deny death through relationships, you can finally live. Albert Camus had the clearest answer to this crisis. He said we must imagine Sisyphus happy. Sisyphus was condemned to push a boulder up a mountain forever. Every time he reached the top, the boulder rolled back down, and he had to start again. Most people see this as the ultimate punishment, but Camus saw it as the ultimate freedom. Because Sisyphus stopped hoping the boulder would stay at the top. He stopped believing there was a final victory waiting. He accepted the absurdity, and in that acceptance, he found peace. He found meaning not in reaching the top, but in the act of pushing itself, in choosing to continue despite knowing the outcome. A woman who breaks free from toxic love must become Sisyphus. She must stop waiting for the perfect relationship to complete her. Stop believing that finding the right man will finally give her life meaning. Stop hoping that love will solve the fundamental loneliness of existence. She must accept that she is alone, that she will always be alone in the deepest sense, and that she must create her own meaning anyway. This is the hardest thing a human being can do. Peter Wessel Zapif said most people never do it. They stay distracted until they die. They never face the horror of consciousness. They never look directly at the meaninglessness. They never accept that no relationship, no achievement, no story will save them from the void. But for those rare few who do face it, something changes. The desperate need for external validation dies. The addiction to drama dies. The belief that suffering equals depth dies. And what remains is something simpler, clearer, more real. A life built not on avoiding pain but on choosing what matters despite the pain. Thomas Ligotti would say, this is the best we can hope for. That consciousness is still a nightmare. Existence is still horror. But at least it is horror we choose for ourselves. At least it is suffering with our eyes open instead of closed. At least it is truth instead of comfortable lies. So here is the final answer. Women chase men who hurt them because they are running from themselves, from their trauma, from their shadow, from the emptiness that waits when all illusions fall away. They chase toxic love because it is easier than facing the void. But freedom waits on the other side of that void. Not happiness, not completion, not the perfect relationship you were promised. Just freedom. The freedom to choose yourself, to create your own meaning, to stop waiting for someone else to make you whole. This is what Freud, Jung, Nietzsche, Schopenhauer, Camus, Becker, Zapf, and Ligotti all understood in their own ways. That the only path to freedom is through the fire. That you must burn away everything false to find what is real. That you must die to who you were, to become who you can be. Most people never take this path. They stay in cycles. They repeat patterns. They choose familiar pain over unknown freedom, and that is their choice. But for those who are ready, for those who have suffered enough, for those who finally understand that no one is coming to save them, the path is clear. Stop chasing. Start facing. Stop running. Start standing. Stop waiting for love to complete you. Start completing yourself. The man who hurt you is not your enemy. He is your teacher, and the lesson is simple. You do not need him. You never did. You only need the courage to face yourself without him. That is the dark truth. That is the final answer. That is how you break free.